Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulihi il-kareem wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in. Amma ba'd. Okay, so Dr. Saleh Al-Fawzan, he has a great book on Aqida Tawhid. I feel, as a revert, that this book has really consolidated a lot of my understanding. I read ahead. We're going to go back into the book in the sections in order for the channel. So I'll get a little mini refresher. Let's begin. Now, he was in this section where he's explaining Tawhid Rububuyyah, and that it necessitates Tawhid Uluhiyyah. Okay? Now, I still kind of mess up sometimes with the UL and the UR pronunciation, so forgive me in that. Now, he continues here. This means that whosoever believes in Tawhid or Rububuyyah, which is Lordship, recognizing that there is no creator or sustainer or controller of the universe except Allah, the Mighty and Sublime, then he must necessarily agree that none deserves worship in any of its forms except Allah, glorified is He. So here we can see Allah is the only creator, sustainer, and controller. So that in itself, he's arguing, should make us see that if he's in charge of all that, that would then prompt us to understand that he has lordship. And if he has lordship over all of that, we should then worship him. Okay? It's very logical. This is the meaning of Tawhid Uluhiyyah, which is worship. Al-Uluhiyyah means worship. Al-Ilah, God, means the worshipped. So none should be invoked except Allah. So here again, what I like about this book is that he consistently reminds you that you can only invoke Allah. I saw someone do a stupid comment in another channel where they said, by the black stone. You can't do that. That's shirk, because you're swearing by something other than Allah. And you can only invoke Allah. And if you're invoking something, it's a form of worship. So it's very important to understand what makes our monotheism so pure. So he constantly reminds you in his book. Nor should victory be sought from other than him. Again, this is another thing that I like. You're in trouble. You're in war. You're going into the doctor's office. Heck, I'd say if you're a sports player, right? Some people pray to win in their sports, right? You can only invoke Allah. It's not your coach. They're all tools, under Allah's dominion. But you have to go to Allah alone and ask Allah to help you to be victorious. Okay? Now we see today a lot of people going to occultic means. And sadly, I've seen some people starting to bring up ancient Egyptian religion, and I find this to be quite odd when, according to Christians and us Muslims, Allah destroyed them for a reason. So it is quite odd to see people want to bring back that type of polytheism. And so it is strange they'll carry that Ankh cross, and it's just really bizarre. But again, if we need victory, we seek it from Allah. Nor should reliance and trust be placed in other than Him. Again, reliance and trust being placed in Allah alone. So here what has He told us? Invoke Allah alone, seek victory through Allah alone, and then put your trust and reliance in Allah alone. Not in a saint, not in a jinn, not in anyone in the Prophet's family, nor in any prophet. It's Allah alone. You can't associate anyone in authority with Allah. This is very important for us. Highly important. Because shirk leads to hellfire. So we have to make sure we don't go into that route. May Allah bless the translators who translated this book. Nor should animal sacrifice be made to other than Him. Now this one, again, for me, was educational, because sometimes you might be like, oh, let's sacrifice, this chicken for tonight's guest. Now, you could do something in honor of someone visiting you, but you can't invoke the name at the time of slaughter. You know, in the name of Allah, have someone slaughter your animal the halal way, and then you host the dinner for your guest. But you had to be careful in the way in which you sacrifice, what words you say. And then, if you are hanging around these dirty pagans, these Wiccans, these occultists who are everywhere in America, watch out, because if you eat at their house, they do really strange things with their food. So you gotta be careful whose house you eat at. You just gotta be so careful. And personally, me, I'm gonna stop eating at Hindu restaurants. I love Indian food, but I gotta be really careful because you don't know if they're praying across the food. And when you go in there, they have all these idols. It really sucks, man. The food is good, so I have to learn it on my own. But I started thinking to myself, what if they start blessing the food, or like, you just never know what the cooks are up to. You just gotta be so careful, you know? So this one was a great reminder that he included. Nor should oaths be made, or any act of worship be directed to other than him. Again, so oaths. So when you make an oath, you can be like, by Allah, I swear by Allah, right? When you're making a serious oath, you have to make sure you're doing it right and doing it with Allah's blessing and not putting any other name on there. And remember when I was reading the other book, Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab, how he got into acts of worship? This is important because acts of worship is actually a pretty broad umbrella. So we got to make sure that we know what's going on when it comes to worship. It's not just getting on your knees and prostrating. There's other things, like he said, of putting your reliance and trust so severely in somebody to the point where it becomes like a form of idol worship. You know, I think this comes across a lot with bosses, where people just overly want to appease. That may sound weird to some, but there are some people who get to a certain status level and people start acting really strange around them, as if they are gatekeepers. Okay? Especially in certain industries, someone comes around you, they can be like a gatekeeper, and people will treat them like they're some type of demigod, astaghfirullah, on earth. So watch out. You might see it. Tawhid Rububuyyah is proof for the obligation of Tawhid Uluhiyyah. This is why most of the arguments with which Allah, glorified is He, confutes those who deny Uluhiyyah, their acceptance of Tawhid or Rububuyyah. As an example, Allah, the Most High, said in the Quran 2 Al-Baqarah 21-22, O mankind, worship your Lord Allah, who created you and those who were before you, so that you may become al-muttaqun, the pious. He who has made the earth a resting place for you, and the sky as a canopy, and sent down water rain from the sky, and brought forth therewith fruits as provision for you, then do not set up rivals unto Allah in worship, while you know that He alone has the right to be worshipped. Quran 2:21-22. Now, setting up the rivals. So, if you set up a rival, you're worshipping it. And al-uluhiyyah is worship, right? So, if you know that Allah has Lordship, oneness in Lordship, and that then necessitates He has oneness in worship, and then you see this ayat that says don't set up rivals, well, it's made it quite clear. And it further says, who created you? So you see that Allah created you, which, remember, He said that Allah is the only creator, sustainer, controller. So here, He cited this ayat to prove that. So you can see those two forms of Tawheed and how they're greatly linked to each other, with the backing of the Quran to show that this is what it is. So anyone who denies Tawheed as a concept in Islam, I'd say run far away from them, because they are willfully choosing to not study, or willfully choosing to not see it in the text itself. Because as I became more familiar with this topic, I began to see, there's a lot going on here that we gotta know, and it makes sense that there be oneness in Allah. Because think about when you focus in your prayer, your eyes converge on one specific spot. But imagine if you had to look here, during your prayers, and you're just constantly, and you just get overwhelmed. The sheer number of pagan deities can overwhelm a person to the point where they don't know who am I going to worship? Should I worship you? Oh, there's someone for this mountain. There's one for this sea. Oh my gosh, there's so many different ones I gotta, worship. Oh, I gotta make sure not to offend this one, not to offend that one. No, it's way more concise to have one supreme controller. And that is a mercy as well, because you're able to hyper-focus on this one area. Even when you're giving birth, they tell you focus on one area and then push all your energy and bear down and take the contractions when you're looking on this one area. When you're getting ready to throw a hoop in basketball, they would tell you look at the area first, then do it. They don't say, look at this corner, look at this corner, look at this, hit it. No, it's focus on this one spot so that you can get the shot. And even in boxing, try to land where you want to hit. You have to focus on this spot when you're practicing leg kicks and such. Again, there's lots of things in life where when you focus on one specific spot, you have success in achieving your mark. So if you expand that same type of process and comprehension to worshiping Allah alone, you begin to see the wisdom and beauty in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala being one, and that we have a straight path. It's not, here's this trail for this deity, and I gotta do this, and so needs their specific ritual on this day. No, it's quite different. So, it is quite amazing how he educates us on Tawhid Rububuyyah, Lordship, Oneness and Lordship, and Tawhid Uluhiyyah, which is Oneness and Worship. So again, only seek victory from Allah. Only should an animal be sacrificed to Allah. Oath should be made to Allah alone by invoking His name and such. And all acts of worship are only directed to Allah. So highly important. Hope you enjoyed, fam. Super educational. I mean, it's just quite great. Oh, and there's also another point here I want to share with you. So, he ordered them to Tawhid Uluhiyyah worship, which is his worship, and he confuted them with Tawhid Rububuyyah, Lordship, which is the creation of mankind, those of old and latter generations. Created the creation of the heavens and the earth, and whatever is in them, and the subduing of the wind. And so here he shows you how the elements are, and that when you realize everything's under the dominion of Allah, he says that this gives you an instinctive way to prove that Tawhid Uluhiyyah is with Tawhid Rububiyyah, and that humans are naturally attached to the source of their creation and to the origin that benefits them or harms them. And so if you know that Allah is the only one who can benefit or harm you, you're naturally going to be attached to that. And being attached to it is also a form of worship, right? And then he says here that by doing so, that'll advance you towards getting closer to Allah. And by getting closer to Allah, that'll strengthen you and it'll please Allah. And you'll have a stronger bond. And that Tawhid al-Rububiyyah is the door to Tawhid al-Uluhiyyah, unity in Godship. And that this is why Allah confuted the idolaters with this methodology and commanded His messenger to confute them. So again, highly beneficial, I must say. And it's just pretty cool how he just lays it all out here for us. So hopefully you learned something, because I know I did. Ramadan Mubarak.